Trump administration bracing for North Korea's next move. The Trump administration is privately discussing how to respond should North Korea decide to conduct a satellite launch, as talks between Washington and Pyongyang appear to be at another impasse, CNN has learned. Rhetoric between the two countries has become more heated and provocative in recent weeks following President Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un's no-deal summit in Hanoi. But a North Korean satellite launch would pose a new, high-stakes dilemma for the administration. Such a launch by the North Koreans would force Trump to make a tough choice, take a hard line against Pyongyang, knowing it could jeopardize already fragile negotiations, or implement a more nuanced approach in hopes of preserving the possibility of a diplomatic resolution. U.S. officials have said that the administration is constantly monitoring activity at various sites via satellites, radars, and electronic intelligence. Administration officials say there is no intelligence at this time that indicates exactly what move the North Koreans might make next, but they do acknowledge that a satellite launch could be on the horizon, which is why they are having these internal conversations about how the U.S. might react. Those warnings have taken on added urgency as satellite images picked up activity at the Sahay satellite launch facility around the time of the summit in Hanoi, Vietnam, officials said. A tepid response to a potential North Korean satellite launch, which is being advocated by officials in the administration, is sure to draw criticisms of double standards, given Secretary of State Mike Pompeo's harsh rhetoric aimed at Iran over similar activities earlier this year. However, some officials believe that may be a risk worth taking, as a harsh response could derail the diplomatic process. A U.S. official told CNN that the North Koreans also know how provocative any launch would be and the impact it would have on negotiations, noting that the intelligence community believes Pyongyang sees continued diplomacy with Washington as in their best interest. Recently observed activity at several launch sites coupled with North Korea's rhetoric following the summit could be part of a coordinated, posturing effort to gain leverage in talks with the U.S., the official added. But those developments have prompted an internal debate among U.S. officials over whether the administration should hold North Korea to the same standard as other countries when it comes to satellite launches, like Iran, or issue a more muted response. A satellite launch could be cast by the U.S. as less incendiary than a missile or nuclear test, because it is not a direct link to North Korea's nuclear program. But it is not unrelated. Experts have long maintained that North Korea's attempts to shoot satellites into space could help them develop viable long-range ballistic missiles. Pompeo earlier this year, calling out Tehran for its flagrant actions that he claimed were in violation of United Nations Security Council resolutions. Even with ramped-down language, Pompeo and National Security Advisor John Bolton have made it clear that a nuclear or missile test could be suicidal for U.S.-North Korean diplomacy. But the administration has not said what the U.S. will do if Pyongyang launches a satellite. Well, this North Korea's missile program made strides in 2017, with Pyongyang saying it successfully test-fired 3 intercontinental ballistic missiles. Experts say that, and while it has been more than 3 years since North Korea launched a satellite into orbit, experts have said the technologies are extremely similar. As he left Hanoi, Pompeo said the ball was in North Korea's court when it comes to continuing diplomatic talks. On Monday, Pompeo noted that Kim is Trump, who has said the U.S. will be happy as long as the testing moratorium stands, has steered clear of specifics on how he feels about a satellite launch specifically. But a U.S. intelligence official told CNN that the analytical line on North Korea has not changed after the summit. The U.S. is unlikely to dismantle its nuclear or missile programs and could very easily go back into testing despite its months-long moratorium, the official said. Without being told what the repercussions of a satellite launch would mean, the North Koreans see an open door, explains David Maxwell of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. They are likely in the it. Those who know the regime well, expect that North Korea will do something to puff its chest, given that Kim walked away from Hanoi without any tangible win. General Vincent Brooks, gaming out a response to a potential North Korean satellite launch, has been further complicated by the fact that experts say the US will not be able to assess the payload of a rocket until the last minute. A U.S. intelligence official also told CNN that any assessment related to Pyongyang's intentions would largely depend on the payload of any potential launch. The stakes of that potential decision are only heightened by the already delicate nature of diplomatic talks between Washington and Pyongyang. Pompeo has made it clear that he is done chasing North Korea, given the disproportionate amount of outreach that came from the Trump administration to the Kim regime in the last year. And while both the White House and the State Department claim that conversations are continuing, Special Representative Steve Biegun does not have another round of talks on the calendar with his North Korean counterpart. For now, the administration appears to be taking a wait-and-see approach when it comes to North Korea, but how the U.S. response to a potential escalation could prove to be pivotal in determining whether a diplomatic resolution is possible.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.